All sorts of strange shapes, sizes, and designs. It's hard to believe how this building is even real. Join me as we take a look at the top 15 most weird-looking skyscrapers around. Number 15. Elephant Building, Bangkok. Looking more like something you'd see in a game of Tetris than a flesh-and-blood elephant, this incredible building nevertheless pays tribute to Thailand's national animal, although this particular elephant would probably benefit from seeing a good chiropractor. Given that Bangkok is home to more than 80 completed skyscrapers, if you're gonna suggest building another one, then the architects really need to get creative in order to stand out. Real estate mogul Dr. Arun Chaiseri was clearly already an elephant fan, having opened his own museum to exhibit his collection of 2,000 elephant-themed art pieces. So it was no surprise when he teamed up with architect Ungard Stratabanu, and this amazing building was the result. With 32 floors, including luxury apartments, office buildings, and amenities, the Elephant Building is certainly a striking sight with several unusual features besides its two legs and trunk. Take the elephant's ears, for instance. They're multi-storied balconies, and its tusks, well, they're home to the Elephant Building's management company. There's also a tail which runs down the rear of the building and contains 20 floors of rooms completely cut off from the outside world by smoked glass. The building has certainly split opinions over the years, with CNN adding it to their list of the world's 25 great skyscrapers, but Architectural Digest putting it on their list of the 31 ugliest skyscrapers in the world. Clearly not elephant fans then. Number 14. Castalia, The Hague. If King Kong or Godzilla ever found themselves in this part of the Netherlands, then they'd have to be extremely careful if they decided to sit down. I think it's pretty much fair to say that the tops of these towers are a little bit sharp, although the Castalia certainly bends with the country's architectural heritage. The fact that they're 104 meters tall does tend to make them stick out a little. The gabled roofs on each tower are purely for decoration, but have made them famous in The Hague, and possibly even a figure of fun. Why do we think that? Well, locally, Castalia is fondly known as the tits of Den Haag, despite not being exactly anatomically correct. And if you think they are anatomically correct, then you might want to stop watching this video and call a doctor immediately. Actually, the Dutch Ministries for Public Health, Welfare, and Sport have their offices in Castalia, so it might not be a bad place to get checked out. Designed in 1967 by the architect Jan Lucas, the building was completely redesigned and renovated in the 1990s in a postmodern style. Up until that point, the name of the building was the Transitorium, meaning passage house, but was renamed Castalia in 1998 after the Greek nymph named Castalia. And as a supernatural being, maybe she did influence the shape of the two roofs. After all, there's no reason her anatomy should be the same as a human. Number 13. Umeda Sky Building, Osaka. Looking like something from a Transformers movie, this weird skyscraper in Osaka, Japan is certainly enough to make you drive off the road if you're not expecting it. Consisting of two 40-story towers connected by a floating garden observatory on the top two floors, the Umeda Sky Building is striking due to the huge empty space in the middle, which just so happens to be crisscrossed by the world's highest glass escalator. So if you don't have a head for heights or would simply prefer to keep your lunch well and truly digested, then you might want to avoid paying a visit to this place. Completed in 1993 and standing at 563 feet tall, the Umeda Sky Building was designed by Hiroshi Hara and features the Floating Garden Observatory, which is located on the bridges which span and connect its two towers, along with an underground market recreating the atmosphere of early 20th century Osaka. Several prominent companies are based in the building, including Mazda, Platinum Games, and now the very famous creators of vaccines, AstraZeneca. Number 12. Abraj Al Bait Towers, Mecca. The word breathtaking is overused these days, but it's certainly relevant when it comes to the next entry on our list. As the third tallest building in the world with the largest clock face, the clock tower of the Abraj Al Bait Towers is like Big Ben on steroids. Not only that, but this 600-meter giant looks down on Islam's most sacred site, the Great Mosque of Mecca, which is not only an equally astonishing structure to behold, but also an integral part of everyday function of the towers themselves. In other words, the building contains two large prayer rooms capable of holding 10,000 people, along with a 5-star hotel designed to accommodate the millions of people who make the annual pilgrimage to Mecca. Constructed by the Saudi Bin Laden Group, the Abraj Al Bait Towers is the world's most second expensive building, costing a total of $15 billion, and stands on the original site of the Ajad Fortress, an 18th century Ottoman citadel which used to overlook the mosque and was controversially demolished by the Saudi government in 2002. Number 11. Aqua, Chicago. At first glance, this might look like it's been modeled out of clay by an over-enthusiastic toddler with no concept of the basic laws of physics. Designed by American architect Jean Gang, the Aqua Tower holds the record for the tallest building in the world designed by a woman, which may sound a little sexist to our modern ears, but that still shouldn't take away from Gang's incredible achievement. To capture views of nearby landmarks for Aqua's residents, Gang stretched its balconies outward by as much as 12 feet, which resulted in an irregularly shaped concrete floor slab, which gives the 82-story building its undulating, wavy quality, although the name Aqua was coined by Magellan Development Group due to the wave-like form of its balconies and to fit in with the other nautical-themed buildings in Chicago's Lakeshore East development. Needless to say, its proximity to nearby Lake Michigan also influenced the name. In fact, Gang herself cites the limestone outcroppings that are a common topographical feature of the Great Lakes region as inspiration for the completely original look of this completely original skyscraper. Number 10. Aldar Headquarters, Abu Dhabi. Well, what can you say about this next building? It has the appearance of something which would be more at home in the Star Wars universe. In fact, if you didn't know this was a skyscraper, you might think you were looking at the world's most expensive hockey puck. Surely the world's first circular skyscraper, Aldar Headquarters is one of the first eco-friendly office buildings in Abu Dhabi, featuring recyclable materials including steel, concrete, and glass, but also maximizes natural light and contains a variety of eco-friendly features such as efficient lighting and water systems, a district cooling plant, and a subterranean vacuum waste collection system, which goes straight to the recycling center. Standing at 110 meters high and with 32 stories, the incredible construction has been described as one of the world's most dazzling corporate offices. Not only that, but it won the award for Best Futuristic Design at the 2008 Building Exchange Conference, which sounds like it could possibly be the Oscars of the architectural world. Number 9. Antilia Building, Mumbai. When it comes to designing a secure and stable skyscraper, most architects don't usually use Jenga for their inspiration. After all, the last thing you'd want to model a building on is something which is more or less designed to fall over if one of your family and friends accidentally nudges it. Even so, it has to be said that the Antilia building in Mumbai, India, seems to be just that. It might not look like much from the outside, but this unique 27-story building is actually the private residence of India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani. And if the legends are correct, it has more floor space than the Palace of Versailles. If the roominess of the place doesn't float your boat, then consider all the other amenities on offer. The underground parking for 168 cars, for instance, or the 3 helicopter pads up top, or the 9 high-speed elevators, or the 50-seat theater, or the snow room that quite literally produces snowflakes from the walls. Or how about the 600 staff who are employed to cater to a family of 5? The word luxurious doesn't even begin to describe this place. In fact, it was once considered the world's most expensive residence, which may explain why it was also designed to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake. Unlike Jenga, of course. Number 8. Fake Hills, Bihai. At first glance, this building might look more like a roller coaster, but this is actually a residential development designed by MAD Architects, and that's an acronym, by the way, not a personal judgment. According to the architects themselves, the idea was to combine high-rise and ground-scraper typology to emulate Mother Nature's contours while supplying high-density, economically viable housing at the same time. Stretching for 800 meters across the ocean front, it provides amazing views due to the geometry of the place. Fake hills are somewhat of a reaction to the urban tower complexes which are so very common across China. This complex, on the other hand, is a breath of fresh air, quite literally, as openings in the buildings even allow the sea breeze to pass through. Number 7. Lippo Center, Hong Kong. The first words that spring to mind when you look at the Lippo Center in Hong Kong are futuristic and sci-fi, but only if that future sci-fi movie happened to be made in the 1980s. This building wouldn't look out of place in RoboCop or Total Recall or any of the other classics from that era, so it certainly deserves its place on our list of weird and wonderful skyscrapers. What we think the Lippo Center looks like, however, is irrelevant because Hong Kong residents have nicknamed it the Koala Buildings due to the way its extrusions are clinging to the glass towers. Architect Paul Rudolph, on the other hand, had his own philosophy about the structure, and it had nothing to do with pandas, clinging, or bamboo. Quote, "The aesthetic intent is to give the building presence," he said. "It is intended that the buildings inhabit the sky and become dematerialized by reflecting the ever-changing light." And that's all very romantic, if the building didn't seem to be well and truly cursed. Since 1988, there have been a number of spectacular corporate collapses, and so the owner of the building did what any failing company does in times of crisis and called in some feng shui experts. The first consultant mentioned that the building had a very bad feng shui indeed, due to its famous C-shaped extrusions, so they referred the matter to their in-house feng shui expert, who said everything was absolutely fine and gave the place a clean bill of health. Maybe it's time for a third opinion. Number 6. Marina City, Chicago. If two giants had been enjoying a barbecue in the middle of Chicago, chomped their way through a corn on the cob each, and discarded the empty cobs, the result may look very much like the two unusual skyscrapers which make up Marina City. Do you agree? Well, even if you don't, the people of Chicago do, as the buildings have become affectionately known as the corn cob. And that wacky design was certainly no accident. Marina City apartments were designed to contain almost no interior right angles. The circular hallway surrounds the elevator on every floor, with apartments arranged around the hallway, each of which terminates in a semicircular balcony. As such, every single living room and bedroom in Marina City has a balcony, and the lower floors are no less interesting. When architect Bertrand Goldberg designed Marina City back in the 1960s, the USA's car obsession was in full swing, so he designed the lower 19 floors of the building with a spiral parking ramp with 896 spaces. Now most famous for containing the House of Blues concert hall, Marina City was so called because it was meant to be a city within a city, featuring a theater, a gym, bowling alley, swimming pool, restaurants, and stores. And the marina, of course, which accounts for the other half of its name. Number 5. Porsche Design Tower, Miami. Now, this tower might not look as unusual as some of the other skyscrapers, but it's not the external weirdness of this building that's important, it's what's on the inside that counts. Obviously, we all know what the Porsche company is famous for, and it's certainly not skyscrapers. But this 60-story luxury building located in Sunny Isles Beach, Florida, and designed by Seeger Suarez Architects, is very much based around cars. And we're not just talking about the Porsche branding. No, this residential skyscraper not only has a variety of very exclusive apartments for very exclusive people, but if you have a few Porsches, and why wouldn't you if you live in the Porsche Design Tower, then you can quite literally drive them up to your apartment. You see, the Porsche Design Tower has its very own robotic parking garage with 3 elevators designed for tenants to take their cars up to their apartments and have 2 to 4 of them outside at any one time, separated from the living space by a glass wall. That's right, you can quite literally sleep amongst your cars. Number 4. GenX Tower, Belgrade, Serbia. When you look at the twin concrete towers of this building, connected by a revolving restaurant, you get the impression that this skyscraper doesn't really seem to know what it is. But hey, we've all had an identity crisis at one time or another. Designed to look like a huge gate greeting visitors as they arrive in Belgrade from the west, GenX Tower has really managed to split opinions over the years, between those who simply dislike it and those who completely and utterly hate it. Some have described it as phenomenally ugly, whereas others have dismissed it as one of the worst examples of brutalist architecture. But either way, it's not exactly as welcoming as, say, the sight of the castle as you enter Disneyland. But what it lacks in handsomeness, it more than makes up for in weirdness, and that's why it's made our very exclusive list. At 36 stories, the GenX Tower, also known as the Western Gate, is the 3rd largest building in Europe and was designed in 1977 by Mihajlo Mitrovic in the brutalist style, although perhaps the word brutal is too tame a word for the aura this thing gives off. Nevertheless, that hasn't stopped it being declared a cultural monument and referred to as an urban lighthouse, the most striking motif of New Belgrade and a visual benchmark of the entirety of Belgrade. Strong words considering the revolving restaurant never even revolved. Number 3. The Sutyagin House, Russia. This building is very much the Pinocchio of weird-looking skyscrapers. In the same way that poor wooden Pinocchio just wanted to be a real boy, this poor building always dreamed of being a real skyscraper, but sadly, it wasn't to be. Okay, so it might not be as high as the others on our list, but it certainly gains extra points for weirdness, especially when you consider that it was built by a former gangster, and for a brief time became the tallest wooden house in the world. Standing at 144 feet and 13 stories, Sutyagin was inspired to build the house after touring the world in the 1990s and felt that he needed to produce something based on his impression of capitalist countries. He was especially fascinated by Gothic cathedrals in Germany and pagoda towers in Japan, and this obsessive and bizarre creation was the result. Despite never really being given permission to build it, the Sutyagin house was an ongoing project for its namesake. Every time he added a new floor, it wouldn't look complete, so he kept asking the builders to add more and more staircases, and then more towers, and they became more and more convinced that their employer was becoming more and more insane. Sure enough, he ended up in prison, and the building was eventually half demolished in 2009 due to safety concerns, with the rest of it burning down in 2012. Maybe that's a good thing when you consider it was known locally as Count Dracula's Palace. Number 2. CCTV Headquarters, Beijing. As you can see, our next entry looks like some kind of massive handle, as if we're expecting an equally massive hand to appear out of the sky and simply pick Beijing up like Little Red Riding Hood would pick up a picnic basket. Although that's not the image that immediately leaped to mind for the locals of Beijing. They simply named it the Big Boxer Shorts. And yeah, okay, that's a pretty good comparison too. This 44-story skyscraper serves as the headquarters for China Central Television in Beijing. And when you consider that this building is located in a seismic zone, it's a pretty bold shape to consider. Designed by architects Rem Koolhaas and Ole Sheeran, this skyscraper is far from traditional, with a loop of 6 horizontal and vertical sections creating an irregular grid on the outside. Rem Koolhaas was clearly too aware of what he was doing when he designed the place. Quote, "It could never have been conceived by the Chinese," he said, "and could never have been built by Europeans. It's a hybrid by definition," end quote. Well, a prominent Chinese critic, however, claimed that the building was modeled after pornographic images of a woman on her hands and knees, although Koolhaas officially denied this, no doubt while blushing and avoiding eye contact. Number 1. Robot Building, Bangkok. The robot building in Bangkok basically does what it says on the tin, because it really does look like a robot. Okay, it might look like a robot from an early low-budget episode of Doctor Who, but that doesn't change the fact that you wouldn't at all be surprised if it suddenly got up and walked away, making beeping and booping noises. The robot building was designed for the Bank of Asia to reflect the computerization of banking, after architect Sumi Jumsai was inspired by his son's robot toy. The blocky design was also a protest against the neoclassical and postmodern architecture of the time, with Sumet saying that the building need not be a robot and that a host of other metamorphoses would suffice, so long as they could free the spirit from the present intellectual impasse and propel it forward into the next century, end quote. And I'm sure he probably followed that up by adding, "And besides, robots are really cool." Anyway, his plan certainly worked, because not only was the building placed in the Museum of Contemporary Art's 50 seminal buildings of the 20th century, but also earned Sumet an award from Chicago's Atheneum Museum of Architecture and Design. Bravo! Watch our Obscure playlist for more top 15 videos about the more obscure subjects in our world. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best and most obscure videos.